Hello and welcome everyone. My name is Umair. We're here with another candidate for the Mississauga mayoral election with former councillor Carolyn Parrish. She was the councillor for Ward 5. Long history in politics. Would love to get to know a little bit about yourself, but if you want to just tell us what you've done and your storied history in politics.
Well, I started as a school board trustee, and I was actually chair of the board until I spoke out so that students could carry small curb pens, little symbolic curb pens in school, and I got unelected chair about a week later. But other than that, it was a wonderful experience, 2 terms. Then I was a member of parliament in Mr. Chrétien's government. I like to point that out because there are a lot of people right now aren't wild about the Liberals. But Mr. Chrétien was an enormously wonderful leader. I spent a lot of time traveling because I was our NATO parliamentary rep. I eventually got elected vice chair of the whole parliamentary association for NATO in Brussels because I think at the time I was the first woman, but Canada was in the forefront. Everybody really liked us and we were doing really well. And the real reason is because the president couldn't speak a word of English and somebody had to run the meetings. He was from Spain. So I did that. And while I was an MP, I made a lot of trips to the Middle East. I visited the West Bank, Gaza, Lebanon, Syria, Jordan, was looking into the Palestinian camps and sort of evaluating them as to which were the better ones. I can't believe you call them camps when in fact they're large neighborhoods, and what the rights and privileges were of a Palestinian in those countries. I did get into Gaza once. That was quite an experience. We didn't stay long because there were so many people unemployed watching us, and we were driving through with a Canadian flag on the hood of the car, and you could see they resented people coming in and just looking at them. So I said, let's get out of here quickly, but the conditions there were really sad. I was told that the hydro was controlled by Israel, and it was 6 hours a day, but it wasn't always the same 6 hours a day. So it would come on at 4 in the morning, and you'd have to get up and cook and purify your water or desalinate it. So I have great memories of being an MP. I was a little bit of a disturber, I won't use the real word, in that I marched very heavily against the war in Iraq, and I am so proud of Mr. Chrétien. He kept us out of that.
For sure.
So that's it, and then I was 1 term as a councillor for Ward 6, then I had a sabbatical, they call it when you lose an election, and then 9 years in Malton, which has been a pure joy.
Well, thank you for taking the time to chat with us. We're just going a few questions that the community has been asking, and we want to get a little bit more insights from all candidates. So we'll jump right into it. Number 1 on a lot of people's minds is housing, and so how do we create more affordable housing? How are you going to be working with the different levels of government to sort of make this happen for?
Well, the first thing I have to do is pull together the really reputable developers in our city and have an advisory panel meet monthly. How is your application progressing? What are we doing wrong at the city? What's slowing you down? That's important. Number 2, the small things like fourplexes and backyard residences aren't going to do the trick. I support them, but they're not going to make a big difference. The big difference is going to be to find areas of land that you can rezone. For example, Heartland has a big section of the plaza where the stores aren't doing as well because people use Amazon since COVID. And they've showed me a plan that is incredible. It's going to put in mid-rise towers, a lovely green walkway through the middle, leave some stores, leave some offices. That's what we need to do, rezoning. I also have up Highway 10, 163 acres that are zoned office, and you know well, we're not renting offices anymore. People are working from home. Those are the big changes you have to do to get this to work.
Just on that what is sort of the plan to get more affordable rentals in the market as well?
Well, I'll go back to the 163 acres on Highway 10. The first probably 30 acres are in the flight path, so they will have to stay industrial. Mm-hmm. But when you call the developers in, each one by one, you know when they bought that land, they didn't pay much for it. Right. And you sit them down and you say, you're zoned office and you're not building for 20 years. If you are willing to put in affordable rental or affordable purchase condos based on the fact your land was so cheap, then I would be happy to ask council to rezone that for you. and we have to get signed agreements. We can't have any smart tricks. Like, yeah, we got it rezoned and now we've changed our minds. So that'll be taken care of.
Okay. Some of the cities we're seeing are introducing a vacant home tax. Is that something that you would be looking, or your council will look into?
It's not up to us, it's up to the region, and the region looked at it, and I don't think it's worthwhile to go through the difficulties Toronto just went through, because you have to educate people, that, especially snowbirds, that if you're away for 6 months, if you're 1 month over, you've got to pay the tax. The notification system they had in Toronto was complex. In the end, our fairly qualified advisors at the region said that they didn't think it would be worthwhile to do. So we have not done it, but I can always look at it again.
Fair enough. Going hand in hand with housing is public transit. We've seen the new LRT being put in. What other plans are there to improve or expand the public transit in Mississauga?
We've had a hint from the province that they will look at the loop for the downtown. And the downtown, you've seen, is very concentrated. Lots of people actually renting condos there. And that's probably something we should pursue, but I'd like to have a really strong look at the cost of it. What I think is more important is to get some connection to the LRT east-west. Now, either across Eglinton, or when it gets to the bottom of here, Ontario, and takes an east turn, maybe into the subway. I think we have to look at that. We also have to talk to the bus drivers. They tell us that there's all kinds of problems and they know how to fix them, and we've never really asked them. So when you have buses whipping by people in rush hour with the doors closed and the people can't get on, that's a problem. When you have buses flying around in the afternoon with 1 or 2 people on them, that's a problem. So that all has to be put in a pot, mixed up, and we have to come up with a better plan.
Switching gears a little bit now, one of the things that we're seeing in the community is the recent surge of Islamophobia, where a lot of people are coming out and expressing fears or not being able to talk or even express their opinions the way they would want to. What practical steps have you taken and will you take to sort of combat Islamophobia? And would you establish an advisory committee to get input from the community? And is that something that's in the works?
Oh, absolutely. You have to. I've met with so many groups during Ramadan and in some of the mosques, and it's a reality. It's not just something we're talking about. And I think we need to get leaders of the community together and form a mayor's advisory council and get the suggestions from them. I don't know how to wave a magic wand to make that go away, but I understand it's getting worse. I understand it's out there. And I understand that we have to do something about it, because this city has always been welcoming. We welcome people from all over the world. And I think we want to keep it as a wonderful city where everybody gets along. So we need an advisory council for sure.
Right. I know you touched a little bit about this, about your trip to Israel and Palestine. And with the ongoing escalations, the community is hurting. They're hurting a lot. And we saw that there was a ceasefire motion put forward. What other ways do you think we can help the community heal from this? What other steps can be taken? And how do we sort of address the root cause of what's going on?
Well, the root cause is the war in Gaza. There's absolutely no other explanation for it. It's devastating to watch. I've talked to a lot of people. I had a young lady tell me the other day that her husband had 14 family members dead over there. And they talk about terrorism, and you see a young boy kneeling and his mother's dead and his little sister's dead. Your heart breaks. It's definitely a federal issue to make a change in policy. I blame the United States. I've been known to do that before, but if Biden would stop propping up Israel and force them to come to a ceasefire, and then promise to start to rebuild Gaza, I think that's the real root. I don't know what we as individual politicians can do, but I do, with the ceasefire motion that I put on the floor, it welcomed 17 presentations, really articulate, really well presented delegations to council, and there were 3 from the Jewish community. But it was a good dialogue, and we're okay here. What's not okay is what's going on across the ocean, and I unfortunately feel quite helpless about it. But I mean, every voice has to be heard, 100%. And I have to raise my voice, and I will.
Another issue that we see in the city is Mississauga is home to a lot of refugees from various different countries. What are the ways that the city can support them, and have they supported them, even when it comes to financially? And what can we do to make it more of a welcoming space?
Well, what's happening right now is it's a regional responsibility because they do social services, and they're housing lots of refugees in motels and hotels.
Right.
And the sad thing is they're fed, they have a roof over their heads, but they don't have anything to do all day. Some of them are professionals, some of them are bricklayers, some of them are people we need in the workforce. And I don't understand how we can't speed up getting them to work, at least, getting the kids into schools. Some get into local elementary schools, but the older kids are having a hard time getting into a university or doing anything with their time. So they sit around all day, and I look at the waste of human power, seeing them not being put to good use in a job and in getting them involved in Canadian society, which is where they're going to live eventually. So I find it's a really sad situation. Again, we try at the region. The cost is horrible, and the feds keep promising us millions, and they're giving us not quite as much as they promise each drop. But I will work very hard and this will be the first time in a long time the three mayors all get along. We've been at battle up there for 50 years, but Annette has endorsed me. Patrick and I get along extremely well, and I think if the three of us go to Queen's Park, or the three of us go to Ottawa together, and we put a united message into the other levels of government, it might have an impact.
And then this last question is, as mayor, if elected, you would have strong mayoral powers. Do you foresee yourself using those, and if so, how and for what?
What I would like to do is use the power of persuasion. I would do that to the fullest extent. The only place I would ever breach the democratic process and use a strong mayor power is to do with immediate housing, or something to do with planning, or something to do with providing more homes for more people. And if I have to, I will. And you need 3 other votes, which doesn't sound like much, and we do have a fairly progressive wing of the council. And I really believe, if presented well and everybody's well informed, that I'm not going to have to. I don't like the idea. I've never liked the idea. But to get housing, if we get into a crunch, I would do it.
Okay, thank you so much for taking the time today. Any last thoughts for the residents of Mississauga?
Well, I do have an idea now that they're talking about the 413 going through, that we should go down, Patrick and Annette and I go down to talk to Mr. Ford about designating 1 lane on the 401 East and 1 West to get the truck traffic off onto the 407. He excused all the license plate costs, so I'm sure he can afford to pay the fees to put 2 truck lanes on. That would clear the 401, and I think the truckers would be thrilled because stuff would be delivered more quickly, cost of food would go down, all these things, it's a boomerang effect. So I would really want to do that. That's one of my obsessions.
Anything else?
No, I thank you very much. This has been very pleasant, and I look forward to being the mayor of Mississauga so we can do all these things.
Fantastic. Thank you very much for taking the time. Please go out and vote. Advanced polls open May 24th. Election day is June 10th. Please check out our website, CanadianMuslimVote.ca, for more information, and we'll be putting up more resources for all of you to check out. But thank you once again, Carol.